Alright, good day everyone. So today we're gonna teach you how to make a battle axe for your Mezco Kong. So first we'll show you the materials. So we have here some glue, some epoxy sculpt, some bendy wire, a couple of barbecue sticks, your carving tools, and your figure for your reference. So first, what you're gonna do is you're gonna measure up the battle axe, and from there you will implement those measurements on those sticks, and then you'll cut off the sticks to size and then see if it fits your figure. Here what we're doing is we're using the bendy wire to make a skeleton of the actual battle axe. So first we're using the bendy wires to combine those sticks together, and then using some white glue, what we're doing is just reinforcing the sticks so that they adhere to each other. And then again, using the bendy wire, what we're gonna do is we are going to make the actual skeleton of the axe, or the axe blade to be exact. So here what we're doing is we're adding a bit of bendy wire on the top, which will serve as the tip of the axe. And then what we're doing now is we're forming the bendy wire so that it looks similar to the dorsal plates, or the dorsal plate that is attached to the axe itself. So now we'll look at sample pictures from the internet. We looked at sample pictures from the internet, use them as a study, and what we're doing here is we're checking the proportions of the skeleton that we're making for the axe itself. And again, we're using super glue to make sure that the bendy wire that we've connected adheres permanently to the sticks. So here what we're doing is we're mixing epoxy sculpt. So epoxy sculpt is, for those who don't know, it it's being worked on like clay, but unlike clay that you need to bake in order to dry up, epoxy sculpt is air dry. So it's kind of like clay, and in terms of molding, but when it dries up, it's like epoxy. So here what we're doing is we're applying the first layer of epoxy sculpt to the axe, specifically on the base. So here what we're doing is we're putting some texture on the first layer of epoxy, so that when we put the next layer of epoxy, it's gonna adhere well to the first layer. So now what we're doing is we're applying a epoxy sculpt on the whole axe. And here what we're doing is we're already starting to sculpt the actual axe to especially the handle. So once we've done that, it doesn't have to be like concise sculpting already. So it's basically just giving it form on the first few layers, and then once you have the size that you want, that's the time that you actually build more of the detail on the axe. So here we're starting to build the dorsal plates, the dorsal plate that is attached to the axe. So again, since this is the first layer, what we're doing here is basically just building the basic form of the axe blade. So if you've watched the movie Godzilla vs. Kong, The axe blade is a dorsal plate from a Godzilla. So now we're kind of making a template of what the final detail will be on the dorsal plate. So at this point, we just marked what it's gonna look like. It's not necessarily the final detail per se. So this will just be used as a guide when we're building the whole dorsal plate. So from there, here we're building the kind of the base of the dorsal plate. So again, it doesn't have to be like perfect in terms of shape. I mean in terms of detail, but the shape is already there. So now we're building the base of the handle of this axe. So if as you may know, this axe is made from a muto bone, if I'm not mistaken. So basically that's what we're trying to achieve here. So we're trying to achieve the basic form of the blade and the basic form of the the handle. So here what we're doing is we're basically putting in some details of where the lines will be. Again, it doesn't have to be the final details anymore. Or I mean, it's not supposed to be the final details already, but it's just going to be a guide on what the final details will be. So here what we're doing is we're making a sketch of what the axe, what we want the axe to look like in the end. So this will serve as our template when we're making the wraps on the axe. So as you can see here, we're drawing the wraps on the axe so that we would know where the wraps will be made. And then we've also corrected the shape of the dorsal plate based on what we've seen in the movie. So this one would be an easier correction because there is already some some details on the blade itself. So that's why it's best if you put some details, so at least it will serve as a guide when you're sculpting or when you're correcting your axe. So here what we've done is we've noticed that since the sticks are fairly straight, the bone has a tendency to be too straight. So what we did is we corrected the shape of the bone using a Dremel. So here we're basically just correcting the shape of the bone, and then we're also correcting some details on the blade itself. So the purpose of this is really to have some more room for the clay to be applied when we're finishing it. So now that we already have some body to the blade and to the handle, we now have some room some room for us to adhere more clay, to put in some more clay for the finishing and for the details. So now what we're doing here is we're basically starting to polish the bone. So since we've already have the size that we wanted, so now all we need to do is just to put more details on the blade, and this is what it looks like when we're putting the details already. So now just to check if if it's still in good proportion with the figure. So now what we're doing is now we're putting in the final details on the blade. So now that we have the body that we wanted, we can now put a thin layer of epoxy sculpt to add in the details that we wanted the blade to look like. So that's our first layer. That's that layer that we will be using to put in some more details. And then here we're doing some uh, shaping on the bone itself, so that it doesn't look perfectly straight. And now that we've added the layer uh, on the blade, we're starting to form what the actual blade will look like. And then we'll top it off with some details that will actually be the final details on the blade. So here some more details are being implemented on the dorsal plates. So again, using your sculpting tools, you could do that. You could also use, if you don't have these sculpting tools, you could always use something with a pointed end, like an ice pick or a toothpick, whatever you have accessible at home. So here what we're doing is we're starting to build the wraps that will be wrapped around the dorsal plate and on the handle. So the purpose of this is to whenever you're doing this and whenever you're working with something that's clay-like, it's best that you use a surface that has a plastic cover in it, so that it would be easier to peel off that clay or that epoxy that you've just molded. So now we're implementing the wraps one by one, and from there we're making sure that it looks like the way we have drawn it on our sketch earlier. And since there will be some excess epoxy when we when we attach the wraps to the blade, so we are going to remove the excess from it. And now here what we're doing is we're implementing some details already on the wraps, again using your sculpting tools. So these are just random dots or pointillism that's being done on the wrap. So at first you could make some deeper details when the epoxy is a bit wet, and then once it's starting to dry and it's getting more stiff, then you could put in some more finer details so that it looks more natural. So here what we're doing is we are correcting the spaces, and then there it is. So once we've done that, we'll just allow the epoxy to dry up, and then we're gonna go and start painting. So just like our other figures, we're using acrylic paints in painting the figures. So here we're showing you all the colors that we've been using, that we're gonna use for the blade and for the handle. So these ones will be used for the bone or the handle of this axe. So here we're showing you how we're using the colors to blend the details on the bone or the handle of the axe. And we're doing the same for the rest of the handle. So do take note that this is a time-lapse video, so this process really takes time and you really don't have to rush it. So for each layer, you do have to allow it to dry out first before applying another layer. And here, what we're doing is we're basically painting or applying some details and some paint on the wraps, and then using a brush to kind of dry brush the details. And here what we're doing is, if you've noticed the Kong axe, the handle actually glows red. So it's not a it's not a brown bone per se. So there's kind of a reddish sheen to the handle. So that's what we're doing. And then here finally we're applying the base coat on the blade. So we started off with some blues, and then we're adding some details on the edges. Then part of this process basically is we're applying a mix of mica powder and acrylic emulsion. So later on you will see why. So but that's going to be applied on this blade as well. So here we're putting in some more details on the blade itself to kind of highlight the ridges. So now we're applying the mica powder and acrylic emulsion mixture. So the purpose of this is basically to give the blade a glow in the dark effect. So the challenge with this project is really since you're applying mica powder and acrylic emulsion, it's still gonna show up when the blade is not, or when it's still very visible on the blade. So the challenge there is to kind of blend those details together and make sure that it doesn't really look, and it still looks organic basically. So that's kind of the look that we're trying to pull off here. So now we're applying some more finer details on the blade to blend all those colors together and to highlight the details, the minute details on the blade. So here we're applying a deeper blue on the blade's edges to make the blade appear like it's glowing from the insides of the dorsal blades. So also take note that if you notice, there are some details in between those wraps as well. So we've kind of integrated some blue color in it also, so that it appears like it's glowing from the inside. So from there, once we're done painting, we're now gonna apply Mod Podge on the paint. So the purpose of doing this is to finalize the paint and make sure that it adheres permanently on the epoxy sculpt. So once we're done with that, this is basically our final product. So this is what the blade looks like with the lights on. So notice the red details, they pop on, they pop off, and then the blade itself is showing all those details. And depending on the light, the red isn't really that distracting, so it's blended really well on the browns of the blade. And in terms of size, as you can see here, we've done our best to make the blade in proportion to the Mezco Kong. So this is what the blade looks like with the lights on. with all its details, and this is what it looks like when the lights are off. So as you can see, the mica powder and the acrylic emulsion makes the blade, or some of the details from the blade, glow in the dark. So another try. So again, this is what it looks like with the lights off. So yeah, so that's basically our rendition of the Kong battleaxe. So again, this was made for the Mezco Kong. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel. Please give this video a thumbs up, and thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys soon. Peace.